and welcome to Educated STEM. I am Kate, the founder of Educated STEM, and I thought today I would talk about a few book suggestions for you, especially if you're considering going to graduate school and you're thinking that potentially the ivory tower or academia is your career route. So I have 3 books that I'm going to talk about. So the first is A PhD is Not Enough, A Guide to Survival in Science by Peter J. Feibelman. I'm not sure how you would say his name. Sorry, Peter. The second is A Field Guide to Grad School, Uncovering the Hidden Curriculum by Jessica McCrory Calarco. There you go. And the final one is The Professor is In, The Essential Guide to Turning Your PhD into a Job by Kelsky. So I'm going to talk about this book pretty briefly because it is helpful, but I don't think it is anywhere near as helpful as the other 2. So I got this secondhand on Amazon because people always mentioned it to me. And so I thought, well, I might as well give it a whirl and see how it is. And, this book is a little old. It's from 2011. And it does have some good stuff in here. But it's only 140-ish pages long. So it is brief because it tries to talk about, a whole bunch of things, how to be a good scientist, how to give talks, how to publish, how to get a tenure track career, how to do job interviews, getting funding, establishing a research program. And so all of that in 140 pages, it is going to be brief. And it is brief. So if you want kind of a guide where, they kind of point you in the right direction, this is what you want to think about doing, then, this is going to be pretty decent for you. It does give you some good advice, but it is going to be very brief. It's not going to hold your hand throughout the entire experience. So you're going to have to figure out some stuff if you choose to get this book. The other 2, however, so these guys, look at these. These are so much thicker. And so, yeah, this is the mother lode of information in both of these. So I would recommend you get these guys because they have oodles of good stuff in. And oh my gosh, Jessica, this was kind of from a Twitter post that she put on, and so many people responded positively and with so much good stuff that she turned it into a book. So if you're on social media and you're like, oh, this might not be really helping me, it gave her the idea of writing this book. So, keep going. It could get you a book deal. And so this book, as a first generation scientist, is going to be a godsend. So I am a first generation scientist. When I started my undergraduate, I had no idea. I knew no one who had a scientific career, really. And so I got confused when I got asked to do a poster presentation as part of my undergraduate. I thought it was a joke. I didn't realize that when you go to conferences, people have posters. I just thought it was ridiculous. And so you will not be so surprised if you read this book. It will give you all good stuff. And it takes you from the very beginning all the way through. And it gives you advice, it gives you examples, and really, even if you've got your PhD and you've moved on, you might want to come back and reread this bad boy because it's got some really good information that you may be completely unfamiliar with. And so I love my tabbies. And so as you can see from both of these, they've got tabby-tastic in there. And so these are just notes of, there's good stuff on whatever this page is that I may have been unfamiliar with or I just want to come back and refer to in the future. Chock full of them. So this book begins with how do you choose your graduate program, which as a first-gen person is so daunting. What kind of institution should you apply for? What is the funding situation? How do you get funding? All good stuff. How do you decide where you want to go. Do you travel somewhere far away, or do you do it close to home? So she has lots of advice for ways that you can get, or things that you should consider when you're considering graduate programs. Then she talks about, how do you build your team? So the mentors that you need to kind of help you through this. Deciphering academic jargon, there's a chapter to it because you are going to get so confused. And yes, she isn't in the STEM field. So when she writes about these, she does have some good STEM information in it, but there will be other things which you might find just interesting just anyway. And then she talks about, what to expect during the program, how you're going to go through the different hoops of, qualifying exams and, the classes and, what do you expect? So you might get a handbook when you walk in the door of your graduate program, and it probably has all this information in it. But in my experience, considering I used to write a handbook, most people don't bother reading it. And so, that could be quite dry information. This is written in a really approachable way. I really enjoyed reading this book. So, it will help you kind of get through, and it's a long book. Let's see, where does it end? Because these are the notes, the examples. So yeah, let's say 400 amazing pages that will give you fantastic information. Now, it then talks about how to publish and how to promote your work, what to do when you go to conferences, and then navigating the job market. And she does talk about both the academic route and the non-academic route. And then before, she has a chapter on trying to balance your life. So I will say that if you're considering graduate school, if you're in graduate school, even if you've kind of moved on to that, you're a postdoc, you're a professor, this book might actually be really helpful because it will fill in those blanks. I was reading this nodding along, thinking if only I had known that at the time. And this is recent, so this was only published in 2020, so a couple of years ago. But chock full of fantastic things. Jessica, big thumbs up. You did a great job there. Now, the final book I want to talk about, Karen Kelsky's The Professor is In. So this again is written in a really approachable way. It's more blunt than a field guide to graduate school. Karen isn't pulling any punches about what trying to get tenure or going on the academic track is like. And I think that helps because a lot of the time, people who want to go that route, they might have heard the statistics, very few people actually get to become a tenured professor anymore, but they always think that it's going to be them. And that's fabulous, glass half full and all. But at some point you need to kind of grasp reality and, think about what are the odds that you are going to be successful. And you might be, I don't know. But unless you have an advisor or a mentor who has recently gone through this process or is sitting on review panels for these potential jobs, then who is going to advise you on this? Your peers are currently going through it as well. If they're in the same field, they might be going for the same jobs. So, you probably don't want to be necessarily reaching out for help with them because, they might actually be your competition. So this book takes you through from the beginning to the end. And again, tabbies all the way through. I loved it. So she begins with, the harsh reality of your chances of becoming a professor. And then she goes through, how do you set yourself apart from your peers? How do you apply to become a tenure track professor? What are the hoops that you have to jump through? So, the application has, different sections. And so she goes through, the CV, the teaching statement, the diversity statement, and all the different things. And then she talks about the actual interview process, because if you get invited to the interview, you not only have to look forward to, potentially a panel interview or meeting with the different people across various departments throughout the 1 or 2 day visit, you also have to give presentations. So you probably have to give a presentation on your research. You probably have to give a teaching demonstration, and you might also have to give a chalk talk. So if you don't know what these words mean, then you probably need to read the book. You're not going to be very successful. This is going to take you by surprise. What I also enjoyed about this is she mentions the questions that you might get asked, which are potentially a little illegal. You certainly don't want to get asked any of these. And so how to handle those with grace, because obviously you don't want to say, I'm not going to answer that, that's illegal, because that will probably embarrass the person who asked the question. They might legitimately not realize that it's illegal. But there's a smooth way where you can kind of push this question aside and then move the interview on. So she takes you through the entire interview process. And the key thing that I find amazing about this book is because she used to sit on the other side. So not only has she had tenure, she went through all of that route, but she also used to sit on the committees. And I used to work with these committees, so I know that what she's saying is all true. So I can tell you, if you're reading this going, this can't be true. It really is. It really is. The committees are overworked. They just have to get through, massive stacks of applications. And so realistically, they're looking for ways of removing you from contention rather than saying, actually, I want to keep this person in the pile. Because if you can remove, 80% of the candidates, then that's half the job done. She talks about negotiating a job offer, how to get grants. In fact, she has a sample kind of flow chart of how to structure your grant. So that would be fantastic for definitely the humanities, social sciences. It would need a little bit of tweaking for the STEM side, but you could still use an awful lot of the information and the suggestions that she has. She talks about postdocs and, advisors and mentoring. And then she talks about potentially leaving academia. And so although this book is really all about trying to get a tenure track job, at the end, she has this section, chapter 60, 100 plus skills that translate outside the academy. And so I believe it's 111. Yeah, 111 skills that she has written about, or someone that she works with, Margie Horton, has written about. And so if you're considering leaving academia, that chapter will really help you figure out what skills you have used on a routine basis in academia, and that people in academia just assume you can do, and it's they know that you can do it. How do you then tell someone outside of academia that you have these skills? They don't necessarily know all of the nitty-gritty that goes into it. They might not realize you're an amazing public speaker, you are really good at writing, you're fantastic at reading information and literature and condensing that into a very short synopsis. They mentoring, advising, giving critical feedback, which might then lead into dealing with difficult conversations, things like that. So if you're considering it, 111 things that you may not have considered that you can do, which will then help you kind of focus on your abilities that you can then transfer into a non-academic setting. So whilst it is really about potentially going through the academic route and getting tenure, it has some really good advice on getting grants and other things. So I would definitely encourage you. So realistically, although I had 3 books at the beginning, these are the 2 that I think would be really good for you to read. even if at the end of the day you think that you're going to not stay in the academic route. It will definitely highlight some things for you. And both books are written in a very engaging style. They're not dry. They're very, very interesting, and you'll probably learn an awful lot. Or, they'll just highlight things that you probably sort of know, but then it will just kind of condense it into a real coherent thought. So, fully endorse those two books. So I hope that helps. I know that a lot of the time we don't want to be told, we want to learn it for ourselves. And so reading these sorts of books are probably a very useful thing for you. And they might just open you up to different thoughts and conversations that you can have with mentors and other people. So I hope that helps. And hit like if the video has helped you. And I will see you next time.